There's just a little bit of feedback coming from, I think, one of the microphones, so I've just muted that. There we go. So the eCASS system is the software, sorry, I'm just trying to unmute somebody. Give me 1 second. Patty, I'm just going to put you, Patty from the Links project, I'm just going to put you on mute, if that's all right, but I'll unmute you later on if that's okay.
Sure.
Great. And Adrian, I'm going to do the same for you. I'm just going to I'm going to mute your microphone for now temporarily while we start the presentation. So today's webinar will be looking at the various different steps involved in not only creating an NDTRS form for your eCASS system, but we'll also start to look at how you can upload that information and submit it to the Health Research Board. And we'll be talking about some of the different features, tools, and tips to make this process a lot easier for you and your team, but also for you as a staff member. We designed the NDTRS form inside the eCASS system to make it really easy for you to understand which forms are not complete and which ones are ready to be sent off to the Health Research Board. And I really feel that this is probably one of the most important things we'll get away from today, is just getting a better understanding of how to manage some of that, those forms and the data inside your eCASS system. If you do have a question at any point, you're more than welcome to just hit the space bar, and what we can do is you can click, if you hold the space bar down, it will unmute your microphone and you can ask a question. So please feel free to do so at any time. Okay. So Karen Reed is from North Dublin Community Care, so
she can probably see, but I don't know whether she can hear. Because
maybe you can try sending her a message and ask her to dial in.
There she is now.
Great. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's jump through. So in today's presentation, we'll be looking at really three components. One, we'll be looking at the NDTRS link form itself. We'll be talking about, once you have completed forms, how you start to report that data and submit it to the Health Research Board. The way that that's submitted to the Health Research Board is through their link system. And that's something that we'll talk about. And there's also training available on the link system itself. And I'll give you some instructions at the end of today's webinar about how you can do that, if you are interested or want to have your project workers or frontline staff develop some more familiarity around that. But to be honest, the link system is very much for managers or for a system administrator. So that's the most, those are the people who really need to know that detail. Lastly, we're talking about some of the tools, tricks, and reports that are inside the system. They'll make it much more easier for you to use, manage, and navigate your NDTRS forms. So just a few quick slides to tell you about what's inside your eCASS system to begin with. Enclude, along with my organization, Quality Matters, what we've done is we've put in 3 different components into your eCASS system, and these have been updated recently. It's the NDTRS link form itself, something that we use to submit data to the Health Research Board. We call that the NDTRS link reports. And then lastly, a series of reports and dashboards to accompany that. Right now, there is a process where Enclude is actually updating this information and these tools inside your eCASS system. So a group of addiction services right now will have a new version of this package. And what we'll be doing over the rest of this month, and certainly into January, is actually updating each of the addiction services using eCASS with the latest version of the NDTRS form. I should really be clear here, because I think this is where people get really anxious when they say, oh no, I don't have the latest version. You have actually the NDTRS form. That is the form that the Health Research Board use and every other addiction service is using across the country. What you are missing is a little bit of functionality to make it easier for you to combine information or to identify which forms have already been submitted to the Health Research Board. So when I say that it is the latest version, what you're only missing is a little bit of extra functionality to make it a little more seamless and easier. But the form you have on your system right now is up to date and correct. So today's webinar, in case you're wondering, do I have the right version or not? You're absolutely in the right place. Your form is absolutely fine. and you'll be able to follow all the steps I showed today. So when I started working with Enclude about 6 years ago, every eCASS system had HRB forms and HRB reports. What I'm talking about today is not a simple relabeling of that information. What we've installed are two brand new tools into your system. One is the NDTRS link form, and the other is the NDTRS link report. Now, these are replacing these older versions of them. And the reason that we had to replace them was because there's been a series of changes and updates made to these forms. So what you have on your eCASS system is these brand new tools, NDTRS link form and NDTRS link reports. If you do have questions about what to do with your old HRB forms, you're more than welcome to let us know in today's webinar by hitting your space bar, holding it down, and asking a question. Or what you can do is you can send an email to our colleagues here at Enclude, and their email is member@enclude.ie. But you probably already know that. In terms of what to communicate to your staff about today's training, I think there's really two things that we really want to highlight in terms of need-to-know information. And I'll make sure today's webinar will really highlight where those points are. The first is that on the old HRB form, you would have had to kind of make sure that the demographic details on your client record are up to date. And that's exactly the same. It's just some of those questions have changed. So please make sure you let your staff know that the client record, that very first page and the cornerstone of your eCASS system, is still as important. The next thing is, instead of using the HRB form, you have to start using the NDTRS link form on your eCASS system. We're going to show that right now. I'm just going to skip this slide. Thanks. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a hands-on demonstration. We're going to go step by step, and we're going to look at how we actually create a single NDTRS form. I'm going to stop periodically while I'm going step by step, and that way it'll give you guys an opportunity to ask your questions out loud, because if you have a question about what's on the webinar, you're probably not the only person who's having that question. So it's worthwhile than asking it. And of course, even after the webinar, you're more than welcome to contact us and ask questions and get some support if you feel like maybe this is maybe not the best time. So if you want to sit back and watch, by all means. All right, let's take a look. I'm going to jump into an eCASS system. So I'm just going to slide our presentation over, and I'm going to jump over here. So this is an eCASS system here. It's a very familiar appearance, isn't it? I mean, most people would have an eCASS system that looks exactly like this. I've purposely chosen this system because I don't think we have any people who are using Lightning. Lightning is a newer version of eCASS. It looks just a bit different, but it has the same information on the inside. And what I might do is, just before I jump into here, I'm just going to show everyone Lightning. So what we hear here is the Lightning version of eCASS. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up on a client record here. So if anyone's been in some eCASS training with me before, you know I have a habit of using a client called Otis Redding. So here we are. This is a Lightning version of eCASS right here.
I have the Lightning, Philip, I think.
Great. Well, what I might do, Annabelle, thank you for bringing that up, is I might toggle between the two so that you can have both versions, and you can follow along with me if you need to. But I want to make sure that you don't lose track of how we move through today and how we move through your eCASS system. Is that all right?
Great, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Annabelle. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to pull up a client called Otis Redding. So here we are, very familiar page, a client record. I'm going to go through a few short steps here, and then I'm going to switch over to Lightning for those who are on the webinar who do see that. But I'm going to just explain in broad principles, I mean, what you should be looking for at this point, okay? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure our client information is correct, and that means opening the page up by clicking the Edit button. Here, you can see that I have only included very minimal information for our client. They have their name and their client ID and their birth date. Now, the birth date's actually the very first place that the NDTRS form becomes apparent. We need to make sure we have a birth date entered because that gives us the age, and that's one of the very first questions on the NDTRS form. Now, I'm going to specifically avoid questions that don't relate to the NDTRS form. Now, they may be important for your addiction service, but they don't relate to the NDTRS form. So you'll need to just kind of fill in the blanks, I suppose, when you're back at the office. But today, we're just going to really put a laser focus on things you need to know. On the right-hand side, there's a button that says HSC area. Now, this is usually assigned for each addiction service, but some may have a drop-down menu, so make sure you're choosing the right one. So I'm going to choose 09. Okay. The next area that relates to the NDTRS form is the address. And you can see I've just put in here 5 Gardner Row, Dublin 1, and I'm going to leave that for now. I'm not going to put too much detail, and I'll show you afterwards why the address is really important. In fact, we'll need it for this section right here, NDTRS link, small area. There's questions here like electoral division and CHO number. Now, you're not required as a service provider to memorize all that detail for your client. In fact, the eCASS system is connected to a little database that will draw that information and put it onto the page, but you need the address to do it. So what you can do is this. Once you've put in an address for a client, you can go to the top of the page and press save. Once you've pressed saved, you can click the button, Get Small Area. And what will happen is a screen will appear. It will draw from your client record their address, but it will scan and try to find a small area location for them. And this is the information that they use to put on the NDTRS form. I want to be explicitly clear here. Your client's address is not being submitted to the Health Research Board. What is being submitted are these details: small area, electoral division, and CHO. So once you've found that, you press accept, and then the area gets saved on the client record. So I press close, and what you'll see is down in that section that was once blank, there we go. You see that the CHO number, the electoral division, and the small area detail has been added. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to go over to our links version of the page, and I'm going to go through the exact same steps. This is a perfect time for you to hit your spacebar and ask a question if you do have it. So I'm going to click over here. I'm going to click edit so I can edit this page for our client. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to make sure that the address is inputted. There it is. I'm going to press save. And then I'm going to go up to my window here. Click that, a little drop-down menu. I'm going to click Get Small Area. And what it does is we'll open up the small area page. It's going to take the address off the client record. And I'm going to choose, say, Quality Matters. I use my work address. I press accept, and it tells me that the small area was saved on the client record. So when now I return back to my client, Otis Redding, what I should see on the page is that the small area, there it is. The small area details have been added. Perfect. So now we're back in our regular version. The next part I want to talk about is this section here, the demographic details. Now, this is a section that if you've used the NDTRS form before, you're going to be familiar with. There are a few new questions, and I'll highlight those for you, but probably not my expertise to give a rationale or explanation for why those questions do exist. In fact, as many people know, including Quality Matters, did not develop the NDTRS form. It was developed by the Health Research Board. And many of these questions that you see appearing on your eCASS system that are part of the NDTRS form are similar questions that are being asked across the EU. Information used by the Health Research Board is shared with the EMCDDA, which is the European Monitoring Center for, this is where I fall on my knees. Sorry, Anne-Marie and staff at the Health Research Board. I'm doing my best to memorize acronyms here. But needless to say, this information is used by the Health Research Board to report on treatment cases of drugs and alcohol, both here in Ireland, and then information shared with our partners in the EU. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to work through some of these questions. Now, for those who are using Lightning, the questions are exactly the same and appear identical on your page. So for country code, we're going to choose Dublin. That's where we're based right now. For self-defined sexual orientation, I'm going to choose heterosexual. Now, this is one of the new questions that is on the NDTRS form. For gender, I'm going to choose male. Living where? I'm going to say that this person is in stable accommodations. Living with whom? They're living with their partners and children. Highest education level, we'll say that they finished their junior cert, and I'll put the age here of 14. Their employment status, is that they're unemployed. There is a box here, question 10.8, specify other employment status. Now that box can remain blank. The only reason you need to enter it is if you had chosen other, specify in the previous question box. When we go over to the right-hand side, there's 3 remaining questions. Country of birth, Ireland. Actually, I'm from Canada, so why don't I go down here and put Canada? Ethnic or cultural background. Maybe that they are another white background. And any other languages spoken at home. That is, aside from, say, English, the answer is no. So what I've done here is I've completed the NDTRS details. Now, your eCASS system will allow you to save that at any point, but I really want to insist on one very important box here. A new box has been added to the eCASS system, and this box is intended to replace a box that used to be called HRBOK. This box is called Client Has NDTRS Form since 2019. I'm going to show you what happens when this box is blank. I'm making an error purposely on this eCASS system to just show you this. So I'm going to press save. The box has been turned on, don't forget. And my system is telling me that I have an error message. Now the issue here is that what we've designed the eCASS system to do is to trigger an error message anytime these questions are invalid or incomplete. Now this is very important for project workers. They must have this box on in order to understand if there's any potential issues or problems with their demographic details. So let's say, for instance, I do say, okay, well, simple fix. I've had some blank information. I've now provided an answer. I should be fine, right? I press save. Great. The eCASS system has checked to make sure that information is validated and that it's to the standard needed by the Health Research Board. And that means that now I can proceed with creating an NDTRS form. Now, this is really important. Anybody who is making an NDTRS form should really make sure that the information on the client record is correct before they actually create an NDTRS form. Again, very important step. Make sure the demographic details are correct and the box is checked, before you create an NDTRS form. Now I'm going to just go over here to our Lightning page just briefly. I'm just going to walk through the next few steps for our colleagues in the webinar who are going to be using our Lightning version. Here we are. We're going to be on our client, Otis Redding. And it's going to come up in just a second. And what you can see is that the box NDTRS form is checked. That means the information here is correct. And what I can do now is proceed with creating an NDTRS link form. So I'm going to go to the top of the page and find NDTRS link form. You can see that I have created no forms previously, and I'm going to click New. There we have, the NDTRS form is beginning to open up onto the page ourselves. The first thing I would do when I'm creating an NDTRS form is click the pause button, but everyone already knows that. Now I'm going to switch back to the old version so we can follow along on this page as well for those of us. And here under client page, once you have the checkbox turned on, you can go to NDTRS link form and click New NDTRS link form. Now, for sort of everybody, I'm going to stay on this page because I know most of the participants on today's webinar are going to be used this classic version of Salesforce. Before I go any further, this is a natural place for us to take a pause. And if anyone has any questions, push and hold your space bar and that will unmute your microphone. If nobody has any questions, I'll also kick off, but I want to just make sure we give an opportunity before we go any further. Okay. We'll keep on going. So, like I said, this is the NDTRS form. Now, I'm more than happy to go through the form, but I am well aware that many people who are joining today's webinar have already completed NDTRS forms. They've already gone through this experience. So I'd like to maybe just start the form off, take an opportunity for you to ask a few questions, but I won't go through every question specifically. Now, if that's something you would like some support around or would like some assistance on, our colleagues at the Health Research Board, who designed and developed this form are more than happy to offer training and take questions that you may have about those specific questions. So I hope that's all right. So let's talk about the eCASS system then. So I'm going to click the pause button. This is something that I always do when I'm creating an NDTRS form. When the pause button is not on, it might make it difficult for us to press save. It'll tell us there's errors or things are incomplete, or you haven't maybe completed all the steps necessary. So that's why I always start with the pause button. That means if I ever need to save it, answer a phone call, or jump into a meeting, I can do that and I won't have to worry about error message appearing. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose a treatment center. Now, many services are on this call. They don't have different treatment centers. They only have one, and it's always in that box. But some larger services, like treatment centers like Ashari, Cool Mine, even Merchants Key Ireland, they would have multiple treatment center numbers. But many local addiction services won't. So let's enter some of this information. Data referral. Well, let's say that at the start of the month, a client was referred into us, Otis Redding, and that the main drug that they were using was benzos. So I'm going to put here benzos. Even if I put that in, oh, see, that didn't come up. It auto-corrected. There we go. Oh. Sorry, my computer is messing around with me. Oh. It seems like this test version is giving me an error. So what you would usually do is you would type in a substance, you'd press search, and then the NDTRS drug database would appear here. But it might be because I'm using a test version, that list of drugs is not appearing. Simple thing you can do is on your system, this won't be the case. You can put in the substance, press search, and then it will come up. So I'm going to leave that for the moment. Source of referral, I'm going to say that this person self-referred or presented to our addiction service. And that the date of initial assessment, well, if they were referred on the 2nd, I'm going to presume that maybe we met with them later in the week. We had a one-to-one appointment to do an assessment with them. And the outcome of that assessment was that this client was suitable for our service. And there's different options here. So one is that they were either unsuitable for treatment in our own local addiction service, or they may have been referred to another project. In this case, I want to say that they were suitable and that they were offered a place and that the client had accepted. Now, item number 10 on this page is treatment offered with a center and the client did not accept. And that is sometimes a reality. I just wanted to highlight where that exists on this page. Down here, then we can start entering the form. So number of times the client started this year, 1. It maybe never been treated. So if that was the case and they were never treated, we can enter number 88 here. And we're going to say maybe they were previously treated for alcohol and they did at the age of, say, 25. They weren't treated for anything other than drugs or alcohol, so they were never treated here. And have they ever received opiate substitution? Well, you can see that's already been entered for us. Now, from there on end, the form is largely identical to the previous version. And when I say previous version, I am referring to the HRB form, or the former version of this that appeared on your eCASS system. There are a few changes to the form that I just want to highlight. The first place is under section G, activity details. This is a section where they have made a few changes. The most obvious, and I think probably one that was frequently being asked, is where does key working appear under this list? And you can see down at the bottom of this page, question 24 refers to key working and a number of key working sessions. So that's probably a new area. And again, if you have questions about these specific items on the NDTRS form, I'd recommend that you talk with the Health Research Board and their NDTRS team. I'll be providing you with an email address and some contact details for them, for you to contact them at the end of today's webinar. At the end of the page is the exit details. Now, this is where you can go once a client has left the service and provide some information about why or how they've exited, as well as when. Now, I'm just going to press save. And because I've clicked the pause button, that means there should be any issue. Now I can see, because I'm using a test system, that's come up, which is not a big of a deal. I'm going to show you guys another version of an NDTRS form that is complete. So Here is the beginning of a different part of the system. We're going to talk about a little bit about where you can look at your NDTRS forms. Now, what I'm looking at here is a version of eCASS that has a series of list views. And I'm going to show you in just a moment how you can find them and what the purpose of these list views are, okay? Before I do that, I'm going to pop over to our Lightning version, and I'm going to just do a few steps here for those who are in the room. If you do have questions about where we are in the webinar, hit your space bar and hold it down and you can ask a question. So I'm just going to put a letter into that. Should be able to say here. I'll do it differently. Alcohol. There we go. What's really interesting here is alcohol came up under that drugs database for some reason, but didn't for the previous. Maybe there was might double check that. Like I said, I'm not using a real eCASS system. I'm using a fake version of it. So just there we go. So first time, have they been treated for drugs? They've been never treated. So 88, previously treated for alcohol. Yep. So let's say it was 24 years old when they were previously treated. Have they been treated for anything else? Never treated, 88. Down here, I said the main substance was alcohol. There we are. Route of administration, well, they're drinking it. Their frequency of use, let's say that they were using it daily. And the age of first use for any alcohol was, say, 14. So because I have the pause button on here, I should be able to just press the save button, and there shouldn't be any issue with the system being closed down. There we go. An NDTRS form is being created for those running. So let's talk a little bit about how we validate or correct an NDTRS form. Validation is an extremely important step. Even though information has been entered into the eCASS system, there is a series of validation rules that are used by the Health Research Board to ensure that this information is up to date and also correct for reporting purposes. A brand new feature that's been designed for the eCASS system is a traffic light. So you can see it right now here in the top left-hand corner of your page. It's a traffic light that's called NDTRS treatment status. And red means that this form is incomplete. So any form that's red is a clear signal to you and your staff that the NDTRS form has not yet been validated. What you'll be looking for is a traffic light that's either yellow or green. This will tell you that the form is ready to be sent to the Health Research Board. And I'm going to show you right now how you can validate this page, okay? I'm going to start here, but it's identical for those who are using the classic version of it. All you need to do is edit your NDTRS form. So the edit button on this is right here. So to start validating this form, I'm going to start by taking off the pause button. This will automatically start to check if there's any errors on this page. So let's do it. My eCASS system has told me there are errors. So when I scroll down, I'm going to look for them. Oh, please complete question 26. Age first used any drug. So I scroll down and look for the number 26. And there we have it, age first used any drug. So my eCASS system is telling me what is incomplete and what needs to be done. So I'm going to say that the first drug they used was at age 14. And I'm going to say that it was cannabis. Was it difficult to assess the main problem? No, let's say the client did tell me that. Now they are using alcohol, so I'm going to just complete that section. So beer, how many drinks per occasion? Say 10, percent drinking problem. Well, this is based on an audit score. Number of previous detoxes, 0. Risk behavior. So have they ever injected? Well, the client was only presented with alcohol addiction, so we didn't ask. So that means if they didn't inject, and it's not known, I'm going to press 99. So frequency of injecting, not applicable. I'm only choosing these because In this particular example, the client did not say that they were rejecting. They really came in for an alcohol, maybe addiction, and looking for support around that area. So, maybe the client did tell us that they had never been tested. So I'm going to try pressing save again, and what's going to happen is the moment I press save, the eCASS system will begin to check if there's any errors on this page. Now, when I press save and I reload the page, what I'm looking for is that red traffic light to change to something else. And if it isn't, I'm going to tell you the reason why. Oh, so there's still a red form. What could be the issue here? Well, it's because there's a brand new step that's been added by the Health Research Board, and that's called check warnings. If you, on your eCASS system, I'll point this out to you in just a second, but here on the Lightning version, there's a button that says check warnings. And when you click this, it's going to do another scan of the NDTRS form to see if there's any warnings. A clear difference between warnings and errors is that a warning is there so that a project worker or a staff member can ensure that something that might be a problem or might be an issue has been resolved or acknowledged. An error message is something that cannot be saved. It cannot exist. It needs to be rectified. But a warning can be permitted provided that it's been reviewed. So I'm going to click return to treatment. That's telling me that I've looked at that. There's no warnings. It's fine. And what we'll see happen on this page is that red traffic light will now switch to green. That means there's no warnings. If there was a warning message, it could be that maybe you've put a very low age. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm going to change first use of any drug to, say, 5 or 6 years old. I know that sounds quite drastic, but I really wanted to show you, I suppose, how a warning message is created and what it looks like. I'm going to put 6. And I'm going to click save. So you'll notice something kind of funny is that anytime you make a change to the NDTRS form, like you've updated a question, that green light immediately turns to red. The reason is because it was green before, it was fine, and then someone's gone in, they've either tampered with it, they've made a correction, they've made an adjustment. Well, that means that the system needs to check it again to make sure there's no more warnings. So I'm going to click over here, and I go to check warnings. I'm going to see what comes up. Client appears to start using drugs from a very young age or an older age. This is unusual. So this is a warning message from the Health Research Board saying there's something slightly peculiar or unusual about this. In this example, Otis Redding told me that they did start using cannabis at a very young age. So this is something that is correct. I'm going to click accept warnings. And what you'll see is that red light will now change to a yellow. And a yellow means that you have an NDTRS form that is validated, and there are warnings, but it is okay for this to be shared with the Health Research Board because the information is correct. So that's it. And actually, if I scroll back over to my eCASS system, I type in Otis Redding, find their NDTRS form, you'll see there's the yellow button here. This is what the page looks like if you're a classic version of it. And if you are wondering where the check warning button is, it's right there at the top of the screen. So what we've gone through is 3 things already in this webinar. We've talked about the client record and making sure there are demographic details. We've gone over 2, entering information into the NDTRS form. And 3, we've talked about the check warnings and validation errors on this. Now, we have a question coming in from our chat. This is from one of the participants. They asked if we can go back over the check warnings button. I'd be more than happy to do that. Thanks for asking your question. So I'll show you how to do the check warnings one more time, if that's all right. Actually, I'm going to start with just making sure I'll explain what happens actually if there's an error message on your page. So when you have the pause button on, there shouldn't be any issue with saving the NDTRS form. But when I need to scan the form and make sure it's complete and ready to be sent to the Health Research Board, what I need to do is take the pause off. So when I take the pause off, I press save. the eCASS system first will scan this page to see and detect if there's any errors. It will highlight those sections in bright red. And here it tells me that although I've entered detail into question 19, I've left this box blank. Okay, so never treated. I'm going to say that their treatment, enter the number 88. So those little help boxes can sometimes be a real helpful tool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press save one more time. The eCASS system will scan through my NDTRS form. And because it's been able to save, that's told me that there's no validation errors. But what I was introducing before was a new traffic light system has been installed, and that the red light means that the NDTRS form has not been checked. So I need to click the check warnings button. When I click check warnings, it will say if there are any warnings about the information recorded on the form. Now, the warning I'm getting from the Health Research Board tells me that this client appears to have started using drugs or alcohol from a very young age. Is this unusual? Please check and confirm. Now, let's imagine in this example that it is unusual for this client. So I might need to go back and check what is the age that I've put in for this client. So I'm going to click on that warning message. Now, when I click it, it brings me back to the form. So I'm going to have a scan of it. What I like to do is I like to click the edit button. It makes it a lot easier to see. So alcohol, they used to 14. Oh, cannabis, 6. Actually, that's not correct. The actual age was 16. Maybe it was an error on my part when I was entering my NDTRS the very first time. So I'm going up to the top of the page. I press save. Okay, now it's red. So that means I need to click the check warnings one more time. And when I do it, I've got no warnings. Great. Click return to treatment. That red light has turned to a green light. Let me be explicitly clear with everyone here. Not all your forms can be green. That's not the goal here. If you're kind of taking away from this is that it is mandatory that every NDTRS form my eCASS system is green, that's not what we're saying. What we're trying to communicate is that you should not have red forms if you're submitting those to the Health Research Board. You should be going through a process where you've taken the pause off, scanned it, press save to make sure that information is correct and there's no errors. But once you've done that, you need to click the check warnings button. And what you'll learn is that either some of these forms will be green because there's no warning messages, or that you'll have forms that are yellow. And those are fine as long as those yellow warnings are acceptable. So you need to make sure you hit the button that says accept warnings. They're there just to help project workers and frontline staff recognize if they've completed the form correctly. And it's a brand new feature that's been added by the Health Research Board. And what we've done is we've put that into the eCASS system. So I hope that answered Stacey's question. I have another question coming in from a colleague up in North Dublin. She writes, Philip, for 2018 clients, that means clients that have an older version of the HRB form, we've migrated those into an NDTRS form. When closing them, do we need to put the closing details on both forms? Also, should we leave the tick box for 2019? Great. Okay, this is a really great question, Karen. Thank you so much for asking it. Essentially, Karen's asking is what to do with some of the old forms that were on there. And I'm going to have to just pause this training for just a moment to actually just answer Karen's question. When the updated version of the NDTRS was installed into the eCASS system, we had to figure out what to do with all of this old HRB forms. What our team here at Enclude has been doing is slowly migrating old HRB forms into a brand new version. That's the NDTRS. Karen's question is what do I do with this information now? Do I need to send that as well as this? The answer, Karen, is no. You can actually just ignore your old HRB forms on the system. Essentially what we've done, we've translated that into a new version, and that's what needs to be sent off to the Health Research Board. You also asked, should we make sure that the tick box on the client page, which reads, client has NDTRS form since 2019, should we leave that unticked? I would suggest actually you turn that on, because what you now have is a client who's still engaged in your service. So I would say that you need to, yes, put closing details on the NDTRS form, not the old version, and make sure that this checkbox is turned on. I hope that answers your question. Does anybody else have any questions before we get moving again? What we'll be doing in a moment is we're talking a little bit about how you can actually get your information outside of the eCASS system and over to the Health Research Board. Great, we have a question coming through right now. So great, thank you for everybody for using the chat window. That's really helpful for me. Great, actually I don't see any more questions. Great, it's okay, we'll keep on moving then. So I want to talk a little bit about the process of how you get your information from your eCASS system all the way to the link system. Now, if anybody here in the webinar is kind of asking themselves, what's the link system? I haven't heard of it, and I don't very know much about it. This is a brand new system, an online system that's been created by the Health Research Board. And for some, if you're an addiction service that isn't using the eCASS system, you're likely submitting your data through the link system. So it's kind of a brand new tool that's out there. Anyways, I want to illustrate what that cycle looks like. And I want to draw a lot of attention to this point right here in the middle, upload to link. So we've already started to walk through some of these steps. The first thing you need to do is make sure you add a client when they are assessed or referred to your addiction service. Make sure that they're added to the eCASS system. The second thing you need to do is create or add a link form, an NDTRS form on your eCASS system. And then you need to review it. What we'll be talking about is this third box here, export an NDTRS link report for all forms available. What happens then is your system will log in to the link system, and you'll take the Excel spreadsheet that's provided by the eCASS system, and you'll upload it. Once it's been uploaded, you'll get an email back saying that the forms have been added to the link system. You can log in. You can make sure that if you uploaded 30 forms, that 30 forms are there. You can also actually look back. You can look back at all the information that you've added to the link system. This way, it's a lot helpful for organizations so that when they have, queries made by a local or regional drug and alcohol task force, or maybe a board of management's asking, you can use your eCASS system, or you can use the link system to look at all the NDTRS forms you've completed this year. So you've kind of got two systems. But it's very important. The purpose of the link system is not just there for your service to manage this information, it's there for you to submit it to the Health Research Board as well. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is this third box right here, how to get information off of it. Here's a little bit of information. I might just pause on the screen. This is a great place for anybody to ask questions about the link system, but here's a little bit of detail on it. So if you do have a question, you can use the chat window, or you can just hold down the space bar and ask away. Just let everyone know it's 10:45 here, so we'll probably continue the webinar for another maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And myself and my colleague Dermot, who's here on the right-hand side, we're going to be staying around till about 11:30, just so that we can answer any additional questions people might have. We like to call a little bit of an eCASS clinic, which is a great place for people to kind of get some Q&As and some troubleshoot some problems they might be having. Okay, let's get into the NDTRS form. So like I said, we're going to start on the third box here, export an NDTRS form. To do that, we're going to need to go up to this button in the top window called NDTRS link form. Now, if you're using the Lightning version, I'm going to show you where to find it in just a second. Here, I want to direct your attention to a brand new feature, which is a drop-down series of views. Now, here in the office, what we call these are list views. And what you have is 10 brand new list views. Now, the whole purpose of these is to break apart all the forms on your eCASS system into a series of different views to make it much easier for you and your team to understand if your forms are not complete, ready to be sent to the Health Research Board, or maybe they've already been submitted. So how do you get a sense of that? How do you see where those exist? All right. I'm going to go through each of these in just a moment. But before I do, I'm going to go over to our Lightning version. I'm going to show you how to do the exact same thing and where to find it. So I go up here to NDTRS link forms. And same way of looking at the views, where it says recently viewed here, I open that up, and what do you know? There are the 10 different So you can click on these, for instance, all NDTRS forms. That's going to show you all the NDTRS forms on your eCASS system. And there we have it. And if you ever wanted to look at one of these specific forms, you could just click on the NDTRS form. It's kind of like a little code right here. When you click on that, it'll open up the page for you. So there we have it. I'm going to jump back into our classic version here, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. So view number 1 is all NDTRS forms, and this is exactly what it's trying to show you. Here's all the forms on your eCASS system. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner right down here, this will tell you that you're looking at 25 out of 187 forms. That's telling me that this eCASS system, or this addiction service, has 187 NDTRS forms. Now, you may not have as much, but this is a test version. As you can see on the right-hand side, there's all this kind of batch information. So we've got 187 forms here. The red light is telling us the traffic light system. It's telling us what stage these different forms are at. I can actually use this, much like I could use maybe a spreadsheet, and I can rank this so I can see that there are green forms, and I can see that there are red forms. But when we started to develop the eCASS system, we realized it would be very difficult for any addiction service to work their way through a list of 187, even though that might be smaller for your own. So I want to introduce a few other list views, okay? So the next one is list view 2, NDTRS forms not ready to attach. And what that's trying to show you is that these are all your red light forms. These cannot be attached to a report because they have not been checked, and there may still be validation errors on them. And I can actually sort these by the client name. I can also sort it by the date that the people were assessed as well. So here's a form, and if I were maybe a system administrator or a manager in addiction service, I might be going through these and I might be asking myself, well, why haven't these been updated yet? If you scroll to the right-hand side, in this page, you'll also understand who created it and who last updated it. This means that it might be a lot easier for system administrators who are trying to work with their staff members to help them make sure that their forms are complete. They can go here and they can see who those staff members are, and that way they can send an email to them. So obviously, I have to make an email out to my colleague Eamon and let him know he's got a few red light forms to be done. My colleague Dermot's laughing. So list view number 2, all NDTRS forms not ready to attach. That's telling us in clear terms, these are forms that need to be looked at. They're not done. And let's be honest, the reason they could not be done is because the client was just referred to our project. But this is the information you need to double check before you can actually submit this to the Health Research Board. Number 3, NDTRS forms ready to attach. These are forms that are complete. Now they could be yellow or they could be green. So these are forms that have been, there's no errors, and you click the check warnings button. And because you've done those two things, that information is now ready to be sent to the Health Research Board. We use this information that's on this list view to create a report that's sent to the link system. Number 4, NDTRS forms that are attached and open. Now there's nothing here. And the reason is because we haven't actually submitted any of this detail to the Health Research Board. Attached open means that forms have been attached to a report and they've been sent off to the link system. But open means that the client hasn't been closed down. That means they're still active in your addiction service. So they have no date of discharge and they have no exit details. Now, if we go to number 5, all NDTRS forms that are attached closed, this would show you all the clients who have been sent to the Health Research Board and that their details have a date of discharge and an explanation of when they exited. Closed means they're no longer working with your service. They've disengaged. Now they may re-refer or they may come back and get a new NDTRS form, but this old form, that's been kind of closed for them. So those are the kind of 5 different list views on your eCASS system. Now, funny enough, there's another 5 there, and people have asked me, Philip, what are these different versions of this for? Well, the whole point of this is to show your NDTRS forms. So it's called My NDTRS Forms. So when I look at number 6, My NDTRS, it's going to show me only the ones that I've created. And the whole reason we tried to create these additional views is so that a staff member who isn't communicating with the health research board or is not responsible for anybody else's forms except for their own, they would have a view that they could only see the forms that they've created. So I'm not worrying about what my colleague Eamon has done, or I'm not worried about what my colleague Karen has created. Here, I only have visibility of what I need to be responsible for. So when I get an email at the end of the month from my system administrator or from my manager that says, Philip, I need you to make sure that your NDTRS forms are up to date and that you've double checked them, I can go into here and I could say under number 7, do I have any forms that are in here? Nope. Or maybe I have a client that I've just seen or got a form for, so that's okay, it's understandable. But when they ask, Philip, how many forms are ready to be attached that you've created, I can say, oh, it's 1. So I can see it. I have it, visibility of it right here. Okay. The next I'm going to show you is how to create an NDTRS link report. I want to pause here for a moment, just in case you have any questions about the list views. It's a brand new feature, so there may be a few queries people might have about how to use this. I already see one question coming through. Oh, yeah. Oh, if a client started treatment. Also, I just wanted to highlight something, is some people may not have these list views. Thank you, Dermot. It's part of the new package that's being rolled out right now as we speak. So if you don't have it right now in your system, you will be getting it in the next couple of weeks or after the Christmas break when everyone's back in. Okay. I'm just getting a message here from our colleague in the Health Research Board. So a colleague of ours in the Health Research Board has just said that, giving us some advice, I suppose, around Karen's previous question. Karen, you'd asked about migrating, about information had been migrated to a new version of the NDTRS form. If, for instance, you have a client that was, sorry, I'm just trying to articulate this because it's quite confusing when we look at these different years. Okay. If you do have, I think maybe the best way is putting it like this. If you have an abundance of HRB forms in your system for clients that have not been closed down, you would have received an email from Enclude telling you the number of forms that need to be migrated. You can find that email simply by searching for an email from Enclude or words that would have included the word HRB forms. Your organization really does have an obligation to make sure that forms, even if they're old ones, that they have been sent to the Health Research Board. And the easiest way to do that is by looking at your old HRB forms. It's where my mouse is pointed right now. If you need support with this, if it feels like it's very technical and difficult for you, I would highly suggest what you do is you speak with our peers here and Enclude. This is something that they've been doing for many other addiction services and something they can help your service with. But to go into a great deal of detail about it might be a bit challenging over a webinar. So I really suggest this, please contact us individually, and we'd be happy to give some advice. One of the questions that's being asked here by a participant is, can you tell us what date that the Health Research Board needs to have their forms submitted to them so we know when validation needs to be done? Unfortunately, I don't have that date on hand. It's really, the real reason is because I don't work for the Health Research Board, so I haven't been informed about that. If you haven't been received information about that already, or a date, you probably will be. But unfortunately, I don't have a date. To my knowledge, they usually get a message around this time of year with some clarity as when that's going to happen. But to be honest, I don't think it's like January 1st, so I don't want to, if anyone's here panicking, I wouldn't say it's as immediate as that. Any other questions before we kick off? Okay, well, I'm going to take another 5 minutes and talk a little bit about NDTRS reports. Oh, great. We just got a message back from the Health Research Board, so they've said, thank you very much. that the date for submitting your 2019 data is 31st of January 2019, and email correspondence went out to all service providers in the last 2 weeks. Thank you very much to the Health Research Board for participating on that and giving us that detail. Yeah, so the date is 31st January 2020, and an email has gone out in the last 2 weeks around that. So this is great. I mean, we're going to be providing this webinar to give organizations some support around this whole process, because I realize people do have questions and they're looking for help. We'll also be providing another webinar exactly the same. It's going to be on Friday, January 17th, same time. So the webinars are free. I mean, they're available to any staff members. If you've got a team of 6 people in your organization and you want them all to do this webinar, get them all to sign up and register and do the exact same thing. And then we'll also be holding a training session in February, but this one will be in person. It'll be at the Carmichael Center. And that training session is really there to help people who are having problems, having difficulty, and really need support. I was speaking yesterday with Anne-Marie Carew in the Health Research Board, and she wanted to make it abundantly clear that the Health Research Board is also providing resources and support to addiction services about the link system and about the NDTRS form as well. So you've got 2 great organizations here trying to support you. Let's talk about creating an NDTRS report, okay? So if you want to send this information to the Health Research Board, what you need to do is create a new report. Okay? I'm going to just say, let's say this is our December 2019, or you could have put here, January 2020 report. Press save. Now, for those of us who are using Lightning and kind of asking yourselves, where do I find this? I'll show you right now. You can go to more if you don't see it on this page, and you can find NDTRS link reports, and you can click new, and you can do the same thing. So January 2020 report to the Health Research Board. Now the description box is really there for you. It's for your manager to see this, and you press save. So essentially I've started to create a report. I want to make something very clear about the steps that I'm doing now. From the point of this webinar moving forward, this is not a step that an ordinary or standard project worker would be responsible for. It is not the obligation of a single staff member to send their information to the Health Research Board. It is an organization's responsibility to gather that detail and send it collectively to the Health Research Board. So the steps I'm walking through are usually performed by either a manager or what we call a system administrator. And those are people who would be responsible for 2 things. 1, communicating with their staff members about making sure that their NDTRS forms go from red, which are not complete, to yellow or green, which means that they're ready to be submitted to the Health Research Board. And the second thing they'd be responsible for is preparing this report. There's a message I have here from Patty in the links in Intracore. Patty, if it's all right with you, if you hang on for 5 minutes, I'll come right back to that question. I'll answer it for you. Thanks so much. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what a system administrator would be responsible for. So for here, I've created an NDTRS report. Okay, it's the same thing here, NDTRS 0002. So what I need to do is I need to attach forms that are ready to be sent. I'll show you how to do that. I go back to my NDTRS link forms. I go to all forms ready to attach. That's really important. And what I do is I go over here to NDTRS report. I double click and I look up and I click, oh, there it is. So, okay, I made 2, but I really meant to make 1. I just had to do it for our other colleagues. And I press save. And what happens is once I do that, that information appears. If I go back to number 2 here, there, I've attached one of the forms to it. Now, in reality, you're never really attaching one form. You're probably attaching reams of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the NDTRS link report. Oh, sorry, I'm going back to the forms itself. I go to ready to attach. I press go. And I'm going to click these green ones. And I'm going to go over here and say, I'm going to choose NDTRS Report 2, click all 25 records, and I'm going to press save. What happens is all that information will be attached to the form now. So if I go, just recycle this. I go back to the report now, and I go back to number 2. Oh, didn't seem like that worked, so I'll try it one more time. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is ready to attach. Go. What I'm going to do is actually, my colleagues tell me you might not be able to do kind of all 25 at once. So great, so let's do that. I'm going to click NDTRS 2. There we go. So now if I go back to the report now, the 6, for instance, that I've added there should appear here. So it's a slightly manual process of going through and checking it.
They're working on making it more.
What my colleague Dermot's telling me is that they're working on making it so that you can click that and grab all 25. I think part of the reason that it is why we can't do that right now is just a limitation with Salesforce. It's not really the case where you can kind of grab 25 and modify all those records at the exact same time. What we do now is we would need to generate that report. Generating a report essentially means it's going to download an Excel version of this to your computer. So what you'll see is that a version of it gets downloaded, and if I go down to my downloads folder, what I should do is be able to see that. There we go. And then once we have that version of it, we can go to upload to link. And when we click that button, what it'll do is take us to the Health Research Board's link website. Now, you need to enter your username and your password because this is a password protected system. I mean, there is very important details about clients in there. But once you've done that and you've pressed login, you'll be taken to the Health Research Board system. And that way you can take your Excel spreadsheet and upload it onto the link system. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the system, so I can't demonstrate that at the moment. But if you do, if you have access training from the Health Research Board, they would have walked through the steps of where you could upload that data. And if you haven't, please let us know. Actually, I'm going to give you some details right now about how you can get some training on the link system, or just familiarize yourself with using it. Okay. So for those of us who are using the Lightning version of it, sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. There. I just wanted to show. I mean, this is essentially the information that would be sent off to the Health Research Board. I know it looks like a bunch of zeros right now, but in fact, this is how data is actually shared with the Health Research Board. I like sharing it, or I like giving it as an example, because I think a lot of people do have questions about what exactly is being shared and how do we ensure that, I don't know, client's phone number or their family member's name is not being sent. I mean, it's literally taking information from the NDTRS form. It's not drawing it from anywhere in the eCASS system. So as long as you're making sure you complete the NDTRS form correctly and there's no errors on it and you've checked wordings, that will make sure that this information, that the information being shared with the Health Research Board is anonymous. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, just briefly, how to make an NDTRS report here. So for services that are using the Lightning version, what you need to do is go to NDTRS link forms. In the same way, you would go down to all forms ready to attach. And then once you see all these forms, they'll all appear either green or yellow. What you do is you kind of click, say, 5, 6 of them that are you want to send off. You go over to this button here where the box is blank, and you say NDTRS report 3. I want to make sure that what change I'm making is for all of the 4 that I've selected, and I press apply. And what you'll see is that each of those will be attached to the NDTRS report. And I know that because when I go over here to the report, I have to press save. My apologies. There you go. Press save at the bottom. Oh, there's no treatment center. I don't know why. That's unusual. I think it's probably because I'm working with a bunch of test information. Okay, great. Press save. That actually won't happen to you at all, just because I'm in a test system. Press NDTRS link report. I go back and I find NDTRS 03, and there I should see the 4 forms that I've added. Wonderful. There they are. I click generate report. My eCASS system will take all that, put it into an Excel spreadsheet, download it to my computer. You can see that happening right there in the bottom left-hand corner. And what I do is I just go back one more page. I click upload to link. It takes me to the Health Research Board's login page for the link system. I enter my username and password, and I can upload this detail. Gone. We've gone through it. We've done A to Z. We've looked at every aspect of the NDTRS form for the eCASS system. So the question is what's left? Just moving through. There is a series of reports that are also contained in your eCASS system. You can find this by going to the reports page or the folder. In it, you will find a folder called NDTRS predefined reports. I'll show you where they are in just a second. But here on this page, what you can see is I think there's about 35 reports that our colleagues at Enclude and myself helped create. You've got, the purpose of these reports are really to help you use all the data contained inside of it. I mean, when I was creating them, I was thinking, my gosh, it's this time of year that lots of addiction services are using their forms to create their annual reports. So they probably want to be able to break down information really simply. So if you are working on your annual report, or if you want to just look at what's inside your eCASS system and on those forms, take a look at these. So there's a bunch on demographic details. There's a bunch on actually tracking and monitoring the number of NDTRS forms, kind of like the list views that we saw before. There's reports on the number of referrals, and as well as a breakdown on where people were referred from. And lastly, there's a bunch of really interesting reports that look at the different substances and what is the primary drug or substance that people present with. And it's very useful for addiction services. I can think of, for instance, some of the addiction services here that have a high number of people coming in through their service, is to break down and get a sense of what those different trends are. If you are looking for them, I'll show you where they exist. Up here, if you don't see it at the top of your page, a button that says reports. You can press the plus button at any time. Go down here, and under reports, what you'll find is a folder called NDTRS predefined reports. And there you have it. Demographics, NDTRS, referrals, and substance misuse. 24 reports. 24 reports for your addiction service to use. So, okay. Getting support. Let's just take a little of this. We're going to take 5 minutes and wrap that up, and then we'll give you guys an opportunity to ask as many questions as you want. And the first question I'm going to answer is one from Patty from Links and Inchicore. So, there are two different organizations who are working with your addiction service to make sure that you guys are supported, you have training, and you get the answers you need. The first is the Health Research Board. I bring them up because the Health Research Board is the organization that has developed the NDTRS form, as well as the questions that are on it. Now, the Health Research Board can provide two types of support. It can give you information as well as guidance on how to answer specific questions, or even clarity about the validation errors or the warning messages that appear on your eCASS system. The second thing they can give you support on is using the link system. And that's the brand new online system used for organizations to submit or upload their NDTRS data. So if you do have questions, I'll give you, in just the next slide, I'll give you some information on how to contact their team. But you also have support available through Enclude and Quality Matters. Now, we're the ones, obviously, who have developed and created your individualized eCASS system. But we also provide a load of support. And I'll go through in just a moment as a reminder of what things are coming down the pipeline in the next month so that you can get some more support. So, the Health Research Board. If you're looking for training on the link system, you can sign up by contacting them by email, ndtrs@hrb.ie. But also, if you've got specific queries about the NDTRS form, or you need some advice about how to answer those questions, or maybe your staff are having a constant or continual problem start to occur, and it has to do with a specific question or how it can be answered, I mean, you can send your query also to the same email address, ndtrs@hrb.ie. And if you are in a situation where you're asking yourself, Philip, I actually don't know who to send this query to. I don't know if it's for the Health Research Board or if it's for Enclude. Send it to either one. I mean, we do correspond with each other. We have two groups of staff members who work closely to support your addiction service. So if it ends up in the wrong inbox, I know that our team here will send that off to the Health Research Board, and I know that HRB will do the exact same thing. They'll be in contact. And I get a few emails every week from our peers there saying, Philip, would you mind double checking this, or would you mind following up with someone? So it's great. We have a very positive working relationship. Another thing is, I mean, what can we provide? I mean, this slide is just trying to really present there's a load of options available. And I'm going to talk about a few in just a moment. But your addiction service provides an Enclude membership, an eCASS membership. It's an annual cost that allows you to tap into these wealth of resources. In fact, you might have just got an email about it in the past 2 weeks as well. And that's why we would really encourage that. We use a small proportion of that to actually help fund us to continue to develop not just these online webinars, but to make sure that we have an abundance of technical resources, step-by-step videos, online guides, and we can deliver in-person training as well. So if you want to know more, I'll tell you how to do it in just a second, but the real answer is going to Enclude's website. There it is at the bottom, www.enclude.ie. If you do have technical problems with your eCASS system, I mean, you don't need to wait for a webinar to happen. You need to be able to make sure that you can log into the Enclude Members Corner. You can do it. You can find it online. It's in the corner, right-hand corner of the website. So there's kind of a pun there. But this is where that when you log in, you can actually raise a ticket. It's like a support question. And that's received by my colleagues, like my colleague Dermot, who's right here. And I mean, their job is to make sure that they can get back to you and make sure that you have the support that you need. So we really encourage people to use that. But you need to log in. And that helps us manage all the kind of queries we get. And to be honest, this time of year, there are a lot. The real thing I wanted to show you as well is, before I answer some questions, I wanted to show you this. If you maybe typed in the word eCASS or Enclude into Google, you probably could find these YouTube videos. They're also available through our website. Actually, I'll show you that as well. So if you go to Enclude's website and you go to eCASS, there's a little thing that says NDTRS link resources. And if you click under there, what you'll see is a bunch of our resources. So you don't need to go to the members corner to get these. We want to make this as simple and accessible as possible. Also, it's great for managers and staff. You can get this link, send it off into an email, and then what you'll see is there's an abundance of little videos here. So these are videos that myself and Enclude had created. That's why I wanted to pull up that page. You'll see there's, like right now, there's about 10 videos. And I've got some bad news for you. You kind of actually didn't need to participate in this webinar. You could have actually watched all these these videos, and it would have explained the exact same steps. So it would have explained how to look at the client records, how to make sure the demographic details are up to date, how to create the form, how to validate it, and how to create a report. So everything that we've covered today is going to be available here in a video, and you can actually access that right away from Enclude's website. But also, we've also been recording this video as well. So we'll share that around as a link. So if people do want to spend about an hour and 15 minutes participating in watching an online webinar recording, they're more than welcome to. Great. Thank you so much for everybody for participating. We're going to answer some questions while we're here. We've got about 15-20 minutes available to do just that. The very first question I want to answer is one from our colleague over in Links Project in Inchicore. If you do have them, you can unmute your microphone or you can type into the chat box and leave them. We'll get through all of them. We won't leave until they're all done. But I want to just say, if anybody is going to be jumping off the webinar, thank you so much for taking the time on a Friday morning to do it. It's a beautiful day here. So I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks so much for your time. So let's look at some of these questions. Let's get through it. Thanks everybody for leaving them. So this is a question from our colleague Patty, who's on our links on our eCASS system. This is due to a pending update, question mark. Also, if this is our first time submitting NDTRS data, do we have to sign up to the link system? Two really good questions. Thanks, Patty. First off, if you're experiencing problems with your demographic data, there was a known error, which was around the children details. And you're right, that's something that we're going to correct since we've clarified with the Health Research Board in this next update. But if there are specific problems you're having, I would say, if you haven't already, is you contact the team here at Enclude to just kind of double check and make sure that's the case. So you log into Members Corner, raise a support ticket, and then we'll get back to you just to double check, because I think that if I was in your position, I want to make sure that that's being addressed. Also, the one other thing that you had asked is, if this is our first time submitting NDTRS data, do we have to sign up for the link system? The answer is yes, you do. And you can do that by contacting our colleagues in the Health Research Board at ndtrs@hrb.ie. Now, they will be running training in January, It's something that maybe you don't have to have the whole staff come to attend. I mean, it's really maybe yourself or a manager or a system administrator who would go there and get some support around that. Dermot.
Some people using the get small area, obviously an obvious thing is the spelling was incorrect.
Oh yeah.
But the other slightly more complex thing is, not complex, but people were putting in, say, the 3 lines of the address and it didn't find it. But if you just put it in maybe the first line of the address,
It's a lot easier. I've had the same issue.
120.
Where they changed that. So just to take Dermot's example for a moment, pause with me for a second, because that small area thing, it's coming from me as well. Oh, it's running. I think we're using the new version of eCASS, but I think that's all right. I'm using it specifically because I actually want to show you something that in my version here, I've put the small area box up in the right-hand corner. Some people ask me, Philip, I want to leave this address, but it's not really finding the right thing. So what you can do is when you click Get Small Area, this right-hand box will appear. Instead of changing the address, you can change it here. So you could actually just take out, say, maybe I got Dublin 1 wrong. So let's take it, let's say 700 Somerville Park. This is something that people are getting. No error. Error, no matches found. So, you know, maybe, oh, is it 7? Oh, maybe that's it. You know, the box allows them to change it. Obviously, 7 and 700 are completely different addresses. So you need to make sure yourself you have the correct address as well. But this is a very good place to change it because you don't need to keep on going back to the client page to make those corrections. So I'm going to see if there's any more messages. Just a few. Thank you so much, everybody. Oh, here's a message from our colleague in North Dublin. Hi, Philip. I can't find the upgrade to Lightning button on my home screen. I thought I would have pilot for my team, so you can tell me where to find it, please. Karen, I'm going to suggest actually you contact our team at Enclude to do that. You're more than certainly able to do it, but I know in the past I've got a few emails from project workers who went, what's happened? Coming to work this morning, the whole page has changed, and now I'm looking at a different version. And when you upgrade to Lightning, it's not an individual thing. It's an organizational thing. So I wouldn't be someone who'd say, here's the button, go do it, because it's going to affect the whole organization. However, we're more than happy to support you guys to do it. If you do want to use this version, that's not a problem. All you would need to do is contact the team here at Enclude, and you can do that by logging into the members corner and raising a ticket. But I see my colleague Dermot nodding his head here, so maybe they'll give you an email later on. Here's another message. Hi, Philip. We've had a few glitches since the update. A warning keeps coming up that says alcohol is mentioned, but we haven't mentioned alcohol at all. Has anyone else seen this? Great information webinar. Thank you. Great, Karen. Thanks for your email. This is something where this question is perfect for our support team to look at. In this case, what we would do is we'd ask for your permission to log into your eCASS system and find those exact forms where that issue is appearing. One of the reasons that it might appear, and this is just based on my own experience doing these forms, and I'm going to switch to Classic here just so I can make it easier for you to get sight of. One of the reasons that alcohol or a warning message could be coming up around alcohol, well, this may not be the place. Like I said, we probably would need to log into your eCASS system to find the exact issue or where that's occurring. So let's say for here, you've referenced drugs. You haven't put alcohol. If you haven't put the age here, or you haven't maybe missed answering the question here for the history of treatment details, that's why one of them comes up here research board about the form itself or about the link system and getting some training, they can be contacted at ndtrs@hrb.ie. On behalf of everybody here at Enclude and the team at Quality Matters, thanks so much and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.